Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller film named Baghead. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins on a stormy night when a man named Neil arrived at the bar with money in hand. He wanted to meet the woman who lived in the basement. Strangely, the bar owner refused this time, shooing Neil away. The owner, visibly agitated, took some sedatives and recorded a video of himself. In the video, he spoke solemnly that the basement of this old building houses a very special tenant. She's bound to the property and cannot leave. If your name is on the deed, you become her warden. A warden's sole responsibility is to isolate her completely from the outside world, no matter what. Under no circumstances should she ever leave the basement. The owner planned to burn down the entire building, but instead he perished in the flames. Yet the curse from the basement continued. A few days later, a girl named Iris received a call from the police informing her of her father's death. When she went to identify the body, her face showed no sorrow. Her father had abandoned her when she was just a baby, leaving her with only resentment toward him. However, as his sole surviving relative, Iris inherited everything, including ownership of the bar. Accompanied by a lawyer, Iris visited the bar. The lawyer explained that the building was over 400 years old. Iris's attention was drawn to the old photographs hanging in the corridor. If she wasn't mistaken, the people in those photos were the previous owners of the bar. The burn marks on the carpet made her uneasy. At the end of the hallway was a locked wooden door, behind which was the basement. The lawyer presented an ancient property deed for her to sign, making her the new owner of the bar. Homeless and in need of a place to stay, Iris signed it without a second thought. What she didn't realize was that signing her name not only made her the building's new owner, but also the warden of its unusual tenant. The lawyer handed Iris a videotape recorded by her late father, saying it was a message he had left for the new owner. The lawyer didn't know what it contained. That same night, Iris moved into the bar. At 2 a.m., she was startled by the sound of footsteps coming from downstairs. Following the noise, she found herself in front of the basement door. The footsteps were clearly coming from inside. She'd have to wait until the lawyer brought the key tomorrow, as the door wouldn't open. Just as fear began to creep in, she sensed someone behind her. Turning on her phone's flashlight, she caught a glimpse of a man's face. It was Neil. Mistaking him for a lunatic, Iris grabbed a bottle for protection. Neil quickly said he was not a bad guy. He just wanted to meet the sexy woman in the basement. If he could see her, he would finally get to say goodbye to his late wife. Iris was confused. After learning that Iris was the bar's new owner, Neil pulled out $4,000 in cash and begged her to let him fulfill his wish. Seeing the money, Iris agreed, telling him to return the next day once she had the key. Iris called her best friend Katie to share the news of her inheritance. Katie was excited and drove over that very night. However, Katie expressed some concerns about the deal between Iris and Neil, but Iris wasn't worried. She figured that back when her father was running the bar, plenty of people must have visited looking for fun. Maybe something in the basement allowed them to spend money for entertainment. The next day, Neil arrived at the bar on time. Iris took out the key and opened the basement door. Inside, the space was completely empty, except for 2 empty chairs positioned in the center. Behind the chairs was a large hole in the wall, pitch black, stretching into darkness. Neil politely called out if the sexy woman was there and asked her to come out. His wife passed away a year ago, and he wanted to see her. Katie began to feel uneasy and urged Iris to leave. However, Iris was also curious about what might be in the dark hole. Neil hadn't received a response after speaking for a long time and seemed to recall something. He asked Iris to give it a try instead. As expected, Iris's voice worked. Soon, a woman with a bag over her head emerged from the hole. She ignored Neil's smelly bullshit and walked straight to Iris. Terrified, Iris backed away, repeatedly shouting at the woman to stay away from her. To everyone's surprise, the woman stopped immediately, obediently following Iris's commands. At Iris's request, the woman calmly sat in one of the chairs. Neil then took out a ring that his wife had worn when she was alive and handed it to the woman. The next moment, the woman lifted the bag and ate the ring. Having no prior experience with this, Neil panicked when the woman let out a terrifying chicken scream. He quickly grabbed a belt and tied her chicken body to the chair. The miraculous moment arrived. The woman's body began to convulse and her gnarled fingers transformed into lifelike human ones. Neil was overwhelmed with joy. However, when he removed the bag, he was so frightened he almost fainted. The woman hadn't transformed into his late wife. Instead, she had become his mother, who had died 20 years ago. His mother had drowned, and Neil had been the first to discover her lifeless body as a child. The memory of her face down in the bathtub had left deep scars on his his young mind. Seeing his mother again, Neil's initial reaction wasn't happiness, but sheer terror. Neil asked his mother why she had abandoned him by taking her own life. He confessed that after her death, he had to live a life dependent on others. His mother didn't respond. Instead, she began crying with guilt. At that moment, a puddle of liquid seeped out of the dark hole. Then, his mother raised her head, and her eyes turned pitch black. The words she spoke next felt like daggers stabbing Neil's heart. He never imagined that his mother would blame her death on him. She accused Neil of being the reason she had died. She demanded that he fulfill her final wish. As she spoke, her neck stretched unnaturally, and her lips puckered as though for a kiss. Terrified, Neil ran away, but when he turned back, the chair was empty. Before Neil could react, his mother suddenly reappeared, lunging at him while vile liquid dripped continuously from her mouth. Iris quickly stepped in, shouting at the woman to stop. She picked up the bag from the ground and forced it back onto the woman's head. Reluctantly, the woman retreated into the dark hole at Iris's command. Once outside, the three quickly locked the door. Neil explained that the ring had originally belonged to his mother before it was passed down to his wife, which is why the transformation had gone wrong. Iris's father had mentioned that the rules required the transformation to last no more than 2 minutes, but in his panic, Neil had forgotten this, causing the mishap. Neil begged Iris to give it one more try, promising that this time there would be no mistakes. Iris didn't understand Neil's insistence. His wife was already gone, and the dead couldn't come back to life. What was the point of meeting her again? Neil explained that all he wanted was to say a proper goodbye to his late wife. Before leaving the bar, Neil left an envelope on the table with his home address inside. He assured Iris that money wasn't an issue and told her to contact him if she changed her mind. After sending Neil away, Iris, accompanied by Katie, watched the video her father had left behind. Iris finally understood. It was because she had signed the deed that the woman obeyed her. It turns out the woman had the power to summon spirits, but Iris's father had warned her that, as the woman's warden, Iris must never exploit this ability, or else she too would fall prey to temptation. The woman could only summon spirits for 2 minutes. If the time exceeded this limit, she would take control of the entire situation. What was even more terrifying was that the more often the woman summoned spirits, the stronger she became. Over time, she would break free of the warden's control and become the warden's master. When Iris's father became the warden, he had considered escaping, but the curse was inescapable. If he left, illness would plague him, making life unbearable, and eventually he would be forced to return. The woman's sole goal was to gain her freedom. This is why Iris's father had warned her never to let the woman leave the basement. He also told Iris not to go near the black hole. As long as she stayed outside of it, the woman wouldn't be able to harm her. Iris's heart ached as she realized her father hadn't abandoned her out of malice, but out of necessity. He had made himself clear, but Iris didn't want to let go of the rare opportunity to make money. Iris promised Katie that once she completed the deal with Neil, she would stop. Reluctantly, Katie agreed. Iris then wrote a warning on the steps leading to the basement, declaring that no one was to cross the line. She stood before the black hole and said she was the woman's master, and the woman would not leave the black hole or the basement without her command. The next day, Iris visited Neil's home, where he explained that her father had been making money off this for the last 20 years. Iris was convinced that helping Neil fulfill his wish wouldn't lead to any problems. Back at the bar, Katie blocked the basement door with a metal barrel so they could hear if it was opened. Just as they were about to leave, a photo on the wall suddenly fell. Behind the photo was the name Otto, who had been a previous owner of the building. Katie did some online research and discovered that Otto's life had been tragic. Just as she closed the computer, Otto suddenly appeared by the bar. Startled, Katie grabbed a bat, but in the next second, he was gone without traces of his smelly hormones. Soon after, Neil began the second spirit summoning. He used a necklace to see his wife, but she was confused and didn't even know she was dead. She cried as she recalled the car accident. Iris reminded Neil that only 30 seconds remained and urged him to say what mattered most. It turned out that Neil had insisted on seeing his wife not just to say goodbye, but for something else. His wife denied that there was another man, but Neil didn't believe her. When the 2 minutes were up, she still hadn't revealed the name of her lover. Neil didn't want to give up, but his wife's expression turned cold. She finally told him there was no other man. She just couldn't stand living with him anymore. Realizing things were taking a bad turn, Iris prepared to cover the woman's head. But at that moment, the chair rapidly moved backward with a flash of white light, followed by the sound of a crash. The woman suddenly teleported elsewhere. Iris walked forward and saw the woman's distorted face. The woman knocked Iris to the ground and tried to cover her mouth, but didn't harm her. After After a moment of respite, Iris firmly said she was her warden and she must obey her. However, the woman responded that Iris still didn't understand because they were both prisoners. With that, she retreated back into the black hole. That night, Iris encountered her deceased father in the basement. She asked about the scars on his face, and as soon as she spoke, he tore off his face, revealing a head covered by a bag. Iris grabbed him by the neck, angrily demanding to know what he had done to her father. The tighter she squeezed, the more suffocating she felt. Unable to breathe, she had no choice but to stop. As she removed the head covering, she saw another version of herself. Just then, Iris awoke in a panic, relieved it was only a wet dream. At that moment, the keychain around her neck tightened. Rushing to the bathroom with scissors, Iris fumbled due to her difficulty breathing, dropping the scissors and collapsing. Fortunately, Katie heard the noise and rushed over to cut the cord. This wasn't the first time Iris had wet nightmares. Earlier, she dreamt of the events that had occurred the night her father died. It turned out that her father had been gravely ill and wanted to say goodbye to his deceased wife before he passed. He planned to burn everything in the house and then explained to Iris why he had been absent all those years. However, when summoning the spirit, the woman tricked him into freeing her. Her father ignored her, instead spilling gasoline all over the floor. He underestimated the woman's power, and in the end, she controlled the flames, burning him alive. Katie believed that the nightmares and near strangulation Iris experienced were the price she had to pay for using the woman to make money. Katie also noticed someone in the old photo standing next to Otto, the lawyer who had made Iris sign the deed. This was a photo from over 400 years ago, and there was no way the lawyer could still be alive. It seemed his purpose was only to get Iris to sign the deed. Katie thought everything felt too strange and decided it was best to leave. However, Iris's reaction was completely different. She said she didn't know how many people would dream of owning this house. If she gave up now, it would be foolish. Iris felt Katie wasn't supporting her because of jealousy, fearing her success, and that it was her own insecurity causing the issue. After hearing this, Katie was speechless and decided to leave. Though angry, once Katie got in her car, she couldn't bring herself to leave Iris alone. Following her instincts, she drove to Otto's old house on the outskirts, using the address from the back of the photo. In the dilapidated attic, she found old newspapers from many years ago. Realizing these might be the key to seeing Otto again, Katie decided to take them with her. Meanwhile, Iris, determined to understand what the woman in the basement truly was, summoned her father's spirit. He appeared, shocked, and asked why this place was still standing since he had burned this place down. He never asked who the woman was or where she came from. Iris wanted to know how to control the woman, but her father said it was impossible. She couldn't control or kill her. Once Iris signed the deed, she entered the curse. At this point, Iris could only stop using the woman. Suddenly, the alarm rang. 2 minutes had passed. Her father's words turned cold as flames ignited within his body. He warned Iris not to come closer, apologizing to the family and hoping Iris could forgive him. Seeing this, Iris quickly put the bag on her father's head. His words left her shaken, and after hesitating, Iris decided to burn the deed. However, after trying to burn it, the deed remained completely intact. This moment made Iris realize the gravity of the situation. That evening, Katie returned to the bar to find Iris completely drunk, passed out on the bathroom floor. Katie didn't notice and went downstairs with a kerosene lamp to find her. Suddenly, the woman with the bag appeared, startling Katie. Her bag and the newspapers fell to the floor. The woman didn't attack Katie, but instead swallowed a newspaper. Soon, the woman transformed into Otto's appearance. It turned out Otto was the first owner of the house over 400 years ago. Katie thought that finding the lawyer would break the curse, but Otto told her it had nothing to do with the lawyer. 400 years ago, an ancient brotherhood discovered a woman who could summon spirits by chance. The Brotherhood wanted to use her powers to gain wealth, but she refused. In revenge, the Brotherhood branded her a witch and burned her alive, but no one anticipated that death wouldn't hold her. After she resurrected, she began a ruthless vengeance against humanity. Plagues spread, crops withered. To stop her, the Brotherhood performed a dark ritual, trapping her in a lightless underground tomb. As time passed, people gradually forgot about the woman's existence. It wasn't until centuries later that the descendants of the Brotherhood unearthed her tomb and once again abused her powers. They didn't realize that the more ruthlessly they used her, the stronger she became. Eventually, the woman almost wiped out the entire Brotherhood, leaving only one warden to communicate with the outside world. Anyone who signed the deed would inherit the curse. Katie was stunned by the truth, but also felt for Iris. Had it not been for the lawyer who told her about the house to inherit, she would never have signed the deed. Otto, realizing that Katie wasn't the new owner, growled in anger. Katie tried to flee, but the basement door slammed shut. Soon after, Iris was woken by the ringing phone. It was Katie saying she was trapped in the basement and asking Iris to come help. Iris made her way to the basement, and the sound was coming from the black hole. Her father's warning echoed in her mind, making her hesitate. But determined to help Katie, she bravely stepped inside. Iris soon found Katie, but as they were about to leave, Iris accidentally kicked over a ceramic jar. It seemed to be some sort of altar. As they walked further, Iris saw a body lying in front of them. When she recognized the face, she froze. It was Katie, lying lifeless on the ground. The Katie standing behind her had actually been the woman in the bag. Before Iris could react, the woman disappeared in the blink of an eye. Without giving Iris a chance to recover, the grotesque woman appeared, hanging upside down on the wall above her. Iris was terrified and scrambled to escape the black hole. At that moment, Neil appeared and pulled Iris out of the basement. Katie's death filled Iris with deep guilt. Had she not been so blinded by greed, Katie wouldn't have died. After some thought, Iris decided to seal off the black hole. If no one used her, the woman's power would weaken. Hearing this, Neil told Iris to rest, and he would handle the hard work of sealing the wall. To ensure Iris slept peacefully, he even gave her some calming medication. When Iris awoke, it was already late at night. That's when Iris heard Neil's voice coming from the basement. Neil was negotiating with the witch. He told her he had signed the deed and the woman had to obey him. He wanted to see his late wife any time, with no time limits. If the witch agreed, he promised she could be free. The witch shook her head and transformed into his wife. She remembered the day of the car accident, recalling that she and Neil had argued. She had felt dizzy, and she suspected Neil had drugged her. Neil didn't deny it, admitting he had slipped sleeping pills into her drink so she could rest and they could talk when she woke up. What he hadn't expected was for his wife to drive off in anger, resulting in the crash. Neil believed his wife hadn't betrayed him and only wanted to be with her forever. His wife, touched, told him that to become the warden, he would need to kill Iris, then they could be together forever. For a moment, Neil retained some clarity. He couldn't bring himself to kill. At that moment, his wife's expression darkened. Neil turned around, realizing that Iris had overheard the entire conversation from the doorway. Iris fled to the rooftop, and Neil soon followed. His inner desires overtook his reason. In the end, he let go of Iris's hand, watching her fall to her death from the high building. Neil carried Iris's body back to the basement, placing her phone on a chair. After the woman consumed it, she summoned Iris's spirit. Iris asked if he was out of his mind since he actually killed her. Neil replied that she had this power and yet didn't use it. She was the one who was truly insane. Neil threw the deed and asked how he could become the next warden. Iris's response stunned him. She said she should thank him. She was already dead, but he brought her back. Her name was still on the deed, and she was still the woman's master. As soon as she finished, the lights went out. Neil was dragged toward the hole by an overwhelming force. The woman then appeared in 3 different forms. First as Neil's mother, who walked up to him and broke his arms. Then as his wife, who lifted his head and slammed it onto the ground like a little Barbie toy. And finally, as Iris, who raised a chair and crushed Neil with it. Just before his death, Neil seemed to understand everything. From the moment they entered the bar, the woman had controlled their thoughts, amplifying their inner desires, allowing people to exploit her time and again. Through this process, the woman's power gradually grew until she finally became the master of the warden. In the end, the woman burned the deed and the house, gaining her freedom. The story concludes here. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.